Okay, it's time. I'm ready. Let's do this. Hello and welcome back to another video. The newest season of Doctor Who is out and I have so many opinions. Lock in or take it one episode at a time because we are deep diving into everything that has happened on this season of Doctor Who. Starting with the Christmas special. We are introduced to the Time Hotel, which reaches throughout human history, and you can go and enjoy a fun little historical mini break. I love this concept and it kind of creates an unlimited opportunity of potential stories to follow, especially around the idea of like the Doctor getting stranded somewhere, or even an entire spin-off series like Sarah Jane Adventures or Torchwood just based around the concept of this hotel. Anyway, we meet Joy. She checks in at a London hotel at Christmas 2024, and as she's checking into her room, Silurian walks through this magical door. I do find this concept quite funny that she's holding a hairdryer, but the Silurian obviously thinks it's like a gun. It made me giggle. Now, from the Doctor's perspective, he lands in the Time Hotel and enlists the help of Trev to follow a guest with a mysterious suitcase. Trev is so sweet and silly. I hope nothing bad happens to him. We see the guy carrying the briefcase pass it off to someone else and then immediately die. And then the briefcase gets passed on to Trev. Oh no, I think I see where this is going. Meanwhile, we get to see what the Time Hotel really looks like as the Doctor steps back and forth through loads of different rooms into different periods of time. It's weird. Trev is kind of a bit himself, but also being controlled. And then he passes on the suitcase to the Silurian we saw at the beginning, and poof. Now we're back with Joy, and the briefcase is about to claim the Doctor as its next victim, but oh wait, she blunders in and takes the briefcase. The Silurian evaporates and the Doctor sheds what I imagine is only the first of many tiers of this series. So great, now Joy is attached to a homicidal briefcase. What's next? A countdown starts to killing Joy, and just before it goes off, another Doctor steps in, giving them the code and deactivating it. And before we find out anymore, this new Doctor takes Joy in the briefcase, leaves the room, and traps the current Doctor in the 2024 hotel room. Are you following so far? I'm not. We now see the Doctor spend a whole year at this hotel, tidying up the place, making friends with the manager, Anita. All this time, the Doctor is waiting for the Time Hotel to reopen for Christmas 2025 so he can step back through to the hotel. Over this year, they show Anita and the Doctor like bonding, building a friendship. She obviously loves him, but all of this happens over like a span of less than 5 minutes for us, so I guess it doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of peak for Anita. Now time is caught up and the original Doctor is now the future Doctor who comes through, gives the code, saves Joy, brings her back to the Time Hotel, and he explains the only way he knew the code is because he heard his future self say it.
Basically, the code came from nowhere, but then so did the universe and no one complains about that.
That's so dumb. That's so lazy. The Doctor figures out that the briefcase is basically like a build your own star and it needs a really long time to mature. So the Time Hotel is the best way to drop the briefcase off at some point in the past, leave it for millions of years, go through another door and pick it up when it's ready. To try and break her connection with the briefcase, the Doctor basically just says loads of really horrible stuff to Joy about like how miserable she must be. And then we get a bit of insight into her life, and it turns out her mum died on Christmas Day during the pandemic. She wasn't able to see her, and it's all a bit tragic, but it works and the briefcase lets her go. And during all of this, they've made their way through a different door into the past. We also find out that the briefcase belongs to Villengard, the weapons manufacturer from last season. Turns out they went way further back than human history, like 65 million years ago to the dinosaurs. And then a big T-Rex swallows that briefcase. You can see where the Disney budget's going. And now they need to find the briefcase again before it explodes in the future. Luckily, good old Trev's consciousness was uploaded to the Villengard system and he's gonna help them. How weirdly convenient. They managed to track the briefcase down into another room in the hotel, but they can't quite get to it. So the Doctor uses a rope and the Orient Express through these different time windows to pull the door open and get the briefcase out. But it seems like it's taking control of Joy again, and she picks it up and takes it off as it's about to explode. By the time the Doctor gets back to her, it seems like she's like absorbed it.
Absorb-a-lot, yeah.
And basically she just sacrifices herself for no real reason. Like a few seconds later, the Doctor could have flown it away and chucked it into space. I don't even know if it is Joy sacrificing herself because the briefcase takes control of her. I don't think she had any free will in this. It just blew her up. And then she suddenly like flies off. Okay. It's kind of just sad because she's like, oh, my mum was right. I am Joy. Like I'm bringing joy to people and we're going to be together. Yeah, because you're both dead. I don't think you can just absorb a star. So Joy flies off and Jesus Christ is Bethlehem, literally. So she's like the biblical star, right? Cool. The end of this episode just left me like, what the fuck? It seems so pointless if the Doctor wasn't able to save Joy, or more importantly, Trev, the real hero of this story. Unfortunately, I feel like this episode has fallen into the same issues as a lot of last season for me. It starts with a cool concept, but then just doesn't really go anywhere. Like the only thing we get from Joy's character is that she's like really sad and lonely, and then she just gets killed off at the end and it's meant to be all like magical and profound. Genuinely, I forced my whole family to watch this with me on Christmas Day, and all I could say say at the end of it was, well, that was shit. Not a good start. On to the next one, the robot revolution. Now, the proper start to season 2. We're introduced to Belinda Chandra, although Varada Sethu was already in season 1 as that army minister who I really didn't like. So I hope there's actually an interesting storyline about this and not just, oh, it's some distant relative who looks exactly like you. She's on an awkward date with an awkward boy and he gifts her a star with her name for her birthday. Then we jump 17 years to her future. She's aged incredibly and is now a nurse. One night, robots randomly land in her garden and summon her to go with them. These robots are kind of cute, but they kind of make me think of those ones from the Peter Capaldi episode where they're smiling, but then they just kill anyone who's not smiling. So if this is anything to go by, the cuter the creature, the more evil it is. Oh, and then the robots shoot a goddamn cat. Evil! It turns out these robots are from the star that is named after Belinda. Oh, and everyone's favorite neighbor is back. It's just pissing me off now. I want answers. And of course, the Doctor just misses her as they take her off in their ship. Kind of tragic for a man who can literally time travel. But he is wearing a kilt, so I choose to forgive him on this occasion. Positive character traits so far in Belinda. She seems to be angry and asking questions. At least she's not one of those NPC companions again. Now on the planet, Miss Belinda Chandra finds out that the robots are actually in charge of this planet and are keeping the humans prisoners. While it seems like the robots want to make Belinda their queen, it turns out they actually want to like merge her with some weird AI robot thing. They're not even gonna try and sugarcoat these messages for you. AI is an evil robot. AI bad. They say they want to weld with her, which has given me kind of like Cyberman vibes. Oh, Bill. Oh, that episode with Bill. Oh, I'd forgotten about that. Tragic. For another time. A weirdly convenient trait of the robots is that they somehow can't hear every 9th word spoken. I say convenient, it's bloody confusing. But the Doctor, who's already there, manages to use this to tell Belinda that there are rebels coming. One thing I don't understand is why Belinda feels the need to use this 9th word trick to say,
so, thank you very much. Very, very much. Gotcha.
Like she could have just said it. The robots don't know what's going on. He just told you like a pretend story. You could have just said, okay, cool, understood. There was no need to use the 9th word thing. So the rebels start shooting and we get a little bit of backstory into one of them who has clearly been spending time with the Doctor, is ready to travel the stars, and then she immediately gets shot. Bye-bye. You're not the companion in this story. You can't make me feel emotionally attached to a character that has had 2 minutes of screen time. So the Doctor is like all upset and heartbroken, but why would I care? I just met this character. Only a couple of them manage to escape, including a little robot who polishes the floor. It's cute. So does that mean it's also evil? In this world run by robots, surely even the robots who polish the floor would be evil. Ladies and gentlemen, we're 2 for 2 on the Doctor crying. Can we go the whole season? So the reason why they went looking for Belinda is because the AI generator has an exact same version of her star certificate that she had hanging up in her room, but from a different point in time. And somehow, even though the Doctor was following Belinda on the rocket, he ended up arriving 6 months before she did. Bearing in mind, Belinda has just arrived. She has no clue what's going on, and this resistance has been running for at least 6 months with the Doctor. One of these rebels has such a problem with Belinda because one of his friends has died. Obviously be upset, but it makes no sense. They're doing this to save her, rescue her, and they're all in it together. She hasn't done anything wrong. She just got there. And because everyone hates her, Belinda thinks it's a good idea for her to just turn herself in. Because surely giving the enemy the exact location of all the rebels is a great way to make friends. Really worthwhile sacrifice. I'm sure none of these people are gonna die once you're melded into a robot. I understand they're trying to show a bit of like the depth of her character, that she'd be willing to sacrifice herself, but in this context, it doesn't make sense. It's just stupid. She's not saving anyone. Now, the Doctor and Belinda get taken away and come face to face with the AI generator. But as it opens up, it's revealed that the AI generator is actually Al, as in Alan, the boy who gave her the star as a teenager. What is this? Oh, and he's fucking terrifying. Turns out the robots heard Belinda on the ship when she complained that it was all his fault for buying her the star, and they went back 10 years and got him. He then basically went power mad and hooked himself up to a machine to control everything. We also get shown that Alan was like weirdly controlling with Belinda when they dated, but now it's gone to a whole other extreme.
Planet of the incels.
Ugh, I find it so annoying that they have to use all the dialogue to explain what's going on rather than just presenting a storyline that makes sense. They're like, oh, he used to be really controlling and an incel, so now he got given a planet and now he's taken over and he's an even bigger incel. I don't think they know what incel is. He's definitely celibate at this point. He hasn't got a lower half. He's not getting any. Like, Planet of the Incels. Incels bad. But they don't really show that. It's just robots versus humans. It's not really anything to do with incel behavior. That's why I don't think they understand what an incel is. Surely if it was an incel world, it would be a really patriarchal society controlling women and hating women. Alan wants Belinda to hold the star certificate because somehow then it will like merge them together. But instead, Belinda uses her certificate and touches them together. And as we know, when two of the same item touch, bad stuff happens. Like Rose as a baby. I kind of like the sequence of showing the jumps in time for Belinda and Alan, but then the doctor pulls Belinda out and she's fine, and Alan is...
The sperm in an egg.
What's happening? And apparently the doctor doesn't have any problem with Alan just getting mopped up to never exist, even though they implied earlier that he was actually trapped and in a lot of pain. Would the doctor not, like, try to save him or undo what happened to him? Or at the very least, in this era of the Doctor, maybe cry about it a little bit? Now everyone's happy, the robots and the humans can live together in peace. And it's now time for the Doctor to take Belinda home. But it's gone. And here is what the rest of our series is set on, trying to find Earth on May the 24th, 2025. Oh, and it is just her descendant. It's so boring. What's the point? Like, first of all, we know for a fact that Belinda can't die now. There's no risk to her. She will make it through the series. And also, just don't bother linking them. Just pretend they're not the same actor. It doesn't add anything to the story. I like that Belinda has a bit more of a backbone. She recognizes that the other rebels trusted the Doctor and they died. They still died. So it doesn't matter if she trusts him. She wants to go home. She doesn't want to just be another adventure. Hopefully we keep seeing this side of her character as the series goes on, challenging the Doctor, pushing him, and making him question his decisions. Overall, I feel like this was a really weak start to the season. I don't think the villain's motives were particularly clear. It's like, oh, he's an incel, so he's evil, but what does that mean? And the idea that you have a star named after you and then that entire civilization worships you is quite funny, but I don't think this storyline was strong enough to take like such a whimsical concept as its basis. But it's the first episode. I like Belinda's character so far, hoping to see her and the Doctor grow more together, and hopefully the future storylines will give a bit more, the main word I keep thinking of is like depth. A bit more depth. Right, moving on. The next episode is Lux. The second episode shows Belinda and the Doctor traveling back in time to try and relocate the Earth in May 2025 using a device called the Vindicator. The way they explain it is like it's meant to take readings from the places they land in and then use those to find out where the Earth is in May 2025. On this trip, they stumble across a creepy cinema in 1950s America where 15 people mysteriously disappeared. Side note, I do love the emphasis on costume changes in this new era of Doctor Who. It's so much fun and the transitions are great. While investigating the cinema, they come across a character called Mr. Ringading, and he is a cartoon character who's been brought to life from the power of the moon. He is so creepy, which I didn't think was possible from such a simple cartoon. The cinema's projectionist, Mr. Pye, is also in the building and tries to warn them to get out, but Mr. Ringading reveals that he's another harbinger. God, I thought we were done with this last season. And he is Lux, the god of light. As Mr. Ringading came to life, oh my god, saying his name is gonna be so annoying. As Mr. Ringading came to life, he trapped the people in the cinema in a roll of film, but it turns out he can also bring rolls of film to life, which is what he did with Mr. Pye's wife. It's really sad, but that's why he's stayed there, so that he can keep seeing her. Since this is all just a game to the gods, Mr. Ringading gives them a riddle.
What have I not done?
As a clue to help them defeat him, before trapping Belinda and the Doctor in the cinema screen. First, they become 2D characters like Mr. Ringading. Then they acquire depth through personal revelations. Get it? Depth. Two meanings of the word. Really clever. Pisses me off. Next, they start scrolling through the frame until they're back in the cinema. Not sure how that works. And then they get held up by a racist police officer, but it turns out it's all just a trick and they're still trapped in the screen. This time, they try stepping out of the screen and end up in the living room of some Doctor Who fans. This both made me cringe so hard and also giggle just because of how silly it is. I do think they let it linger a bit too long and it's trying to be like a really heartfelt moment for the fandom. But I wish it had just been like a quick, funny, oh, you stepped out the TV screen. This is us all watching it at home. And then they go back to the cinema. And then the Doctor is crying at the thought of these imaginary people ceasing to exist. 3 for 3. Also, when they step back in, they're just back in the screen again, so it didn't make any difference at all. Somehow, the Doctor figures out that the way to get out of the film is to stop moving and let it burn, which I'm not sure how that works anyway, but also they don't stop. They keep talking. If it was a roll of film, they're still standing there and talking, so it's still going to new frames. But they just stand still, stop trying to escape, and then in not trying to escape, it burns and lets them escape. Does not make sense. The Doctor gets burnt by the film and then uses some of his leftover bi-generation energy to heal himself. He says like, oh, saving this for an occasion. Why would you use it for such a minor cosmetic issue? Not like if he got shot or something. No, can't be dealing with this little burn. I must use the rest of my absolutely amazing godly powers to heal myself. What a stupid plot point, and it's literally just to show off his like Time Lord powers to Belinda. So now they're back out of the screen, but that's actually great for Mr. Ring-a-Ding anyway, because it turns out he needs to shine light through the Doctor to give himself the power to become 3D. Because what does he never do? Go outside. Because he's just like a projection. If he was exposed to light, he would just disappear, and he needs a physical body in order to carry on existing outside of the theatre. So while Mr. Ring-a-Ding holds the Doctor and uses his power to create a body, Belinda realizes she needs to expose him to light before he can escape. And oh my god, I didn't think he could get any creepier, but Mr. Ring-a-Ding becoming real is horrifying. Poor Mr. Pye has to say goodbye to his projector wife and helps Belinda burn the cinema down. He sacrifices himself, even though I'm pretty sure he literally could have just escaped the same as Belinda by running away after they start the fire. It's just another really meaningless gesture to die for no reason. I can't be sad for these characters when they're being stupid. So the fire spreads, creates an explosion and blows a hole in the roof, exposing Mr. Ring-a-Ding to sunlight. Now he's been exposed to it, he can't help but absorb it, which means that he keeps expanding. Thank God, in his cartoon form. But because he can't control it, he basically just expands infinitely until he disappears into nothing. As well as this, all of the people who were previously trapped on that roll of film somehow get released, even though I'm pretty sure they were in the room that just exploded. Unless that's how they got out of the film. Anyway, R.I.P. Mr. Pye, he just missed his wife. And Mrs. Flood is here as well. I swear to God, the payoff for this better be seriously good. So overall, I had quite high hopes for this episode. I thought the idea of bringing a cartoon character to life was exciting, but they also made it creepy. And although it technically made sense, I found the conclusion disappointing. Like ultimately, what danger was Mr. Ring-a-Ding if he could never go outside? It kind of lessens the threat of him being a god when he can't be exposed to sunlight. I wish it had been more like the Doctor tricked Mr. Ring-a-Ding into trapping himself on a roll of film or something like that. Like when The Wire got trapped on a tape recording. On another note, I do think they tackled historical racism really well in this episode. Not in the same way as like the Rosa Parks episode with racism is bad. Of course it is. We know that. Instead, Belinda is obviously like outraged at the idea of segregation and the fact that they assume she's Caribbean. These are like realistic forms of ignorance and racism that would have happened at the time. But then they don't get too stuck on that point and the storyline continues beyond the topic of racism. I think if they can keep integrating really important topics into episodes like they have in this one, it'll have so much more of a valuable impact on people watching. Okay, on to episode 3. The Well. Belinda and the Doctor are still triangulating the signal back to Earth. This time they land on a spaceship mid-flight and end up joining a search and rescue mission to the planet below. Once they land, they find a series of dead bodies, shot and mangled to pieces, and one mysterious survivor. Alice says that everyone just started attacking each other and she is just the last survivor. I'm suspicious. Also, Alice is deaf and I feel like they did a really good job of making her character not just her disability. And I love the idea of the speech to text for deaf people. We can only hope that's something that becomes a reality in the future. While the Doctor explores the base further, Belinda stays behind with Alice to help her with her injury. Both the Doctor and Belinda have conversations with the rescue team and mention Earth, but none of them have heard of the planet. Belinda then catches a glimpse of something behind Alice, and oh my f***ing god, it scared the shit out of me. Like several times. I had to pause and go back and watch it again, and it scared me again. It's horrifying, but the music makes it so much scarier.
Have you ever heard of
Belinda somehow convinces herself she didn't see anything, but oh my god, I would be out of there. And it happens again. Even watching it back, I know it's coming and it still scares me.
everyone's?
Now the soldiers are starting to worry and notice things too, but when they surround her, the soldier standing directly behind Alice gets thrown across the room and dies. While this is happening, the Doctor's finding out more about the planet they're on, and it turns out it used to be made of diamonds, like another planet he visited before.
400,000 years ago, what was the planet called?
It was called Midnight.
I love this reveal. It's such a great throwback to an episode where we never got to find out what the monster was. And that just makes it even scarier because now we know what it's capable of. Finally, Alice admits that she knows there's something behind her, but she can't do anything about it. And if someone kills her, it'll just jump to that person instead, because that's what happened to the rest of the crew. But of course, the soldiers decide they want to try and kill her anyway. Typical. And as they surround her, every single person who goes behind her gets chucked across the room and smashed to pieces. They think the only way to stop anyone else from dying is to leave Alice Alice alone there so the creature can't escape. This is so heartbreaking. Alice just wants to go home and see her daughter. It's not her fault. In a last-ditch attempt, the doctor has a heart-to-heart with the creature and realizes that the reason why Alice hasn't gone mad is because she can't hear the creature whispering behind her. But what the doctor hears is the creature saying his name. We did all of this with Matt Smith's generation, and I just never really understood it. But anyway, the doctor sheds a tear for his biggest secret. That is 4 for 4. He has the revelation of how to save Alice by creating a mirror behind her so that the creature wrecks itself. I would have assumed the whole point is that no one should be able to see the creature. So putting a mirror behind it should just mean that anyone who looks at the mirror would die, not that the creature itself would get thrown off in any way. However, it appears to work and they all run off to the airlock. It seems like the creature has like an actual physical form at this point, which is a bit confusing. Just as it seems like they're all about to escape, the creature breaks through somehow and locks onto Belinda this time. Girl, we already know she loves a self-sacrifice. There's no way she's gonna let anyone else die here. Instead, the captain of this mission decides to shoot Belinda in a way that won't kill her, but forces the creature to transfer onto her. While they try to save Belinda, she runs to the mine shaft and jumps in to take the creature with her. This self-sacrifice actually did make sense in the context, and oh, it hurt my heart to watch. And just when you think it was all worth it to save them, it turns out the creature somehow made it back onto the ship. But that's the end of the episode. They just leave it with us knowing that that creature's out there somewhere. Gutted, but also really good writing. I love the throwback to the Midnight episode, and somehow they make the creature so scary even though you never actually see it. Like, I felt myself pulling away and jolting so many times watching this. Like I said before, I really like the inclusive deaf titles. This is a great way to spread like a message of inclusivity without having to be really preachy and in your face about it. Like, of course they would have visible speech for deaf people in the future. It makes sense, but it's a great thing to highlight for the current audience. Overall, this episode had me gripped from start to finish. In a short time, it had me caring about Alice and the captain's characters. I cared about their survival. The rest of the soldiers, bit mid. Belinda also got to show a little bit more independence. She was assertive towards the soldiers and compassionate towards Alice, not just acting as like a sounding board for the doctor. If the rest of the season can carry on like this, I will be very happy. On to our next episode, Lucky Man. The doctor and Belinda land in London in 2007 on New Year's Eve and meet a little boy called Conrad. We then jump forward in time to Conrad as an adult, where he has his own podcast investigating the doctor and talking to Ruby. So I guess it's time for our annual Ruby solo episode, which is strange because she's not the current companion. Turns out Conrad actually saw the doctor a second time whilst he was on an adventure with Ruby. I love it when they show us like sneak peeks into episodes that don't exist. While Ruby and the doctor are on this unseen adventure, Conrad gets marked as prey by an alien hunting species. The same thing happens to Ruby, but while the doctor gives her an antidote, Conrad runs away, so they never knew he was there until a year later when he gets Ruby on the podcast to be interviewed.
I am such a fan. I mean,
Who is he?
If Conrad has this whole podcast dedicated to the doctor and like alien life, it seems really strange that he doesn't know anything about the doctor. They make it seem like this podcast is successful. Who has he been talking to? It turns out the reason why Ruby agreed to talk to Conrad is because the creature that marked him a year ago had come back looking for him. Luckily, Unit caught the creature and Ruby has an antidote for Conrad to take. Apparently, through all the awkwardness of this interaction and interview, sparks are flying and Ruby and Conrad start dating. He just seems like such a doctor fanboy. Like, I definitely think this would have been an ick for Ruby, but apparently not. Now, after they've been seeing each other for a while, Ruby goes away on a trip with Conrad to meet some of his friends, but there seems to be a problem with the electricity, which gets Ruby worried about these creatures called the Shriek. Unit said that they have the Shriek locked up there, so it can't be the same one. While Ruby's at the pub with Conrad's friends, they ask about like Unit as well, and I swear it's meant to be a secretive government organization, right? I don't think people are meant to know about it. Or is that just gone completely out the window now? Suddenly they hear screaming and Ruby sees 2 more Shrieks outside. Conrad then admits that he never took the antidote, so they must have followed him here. Stupid, stupid idiot.
I wanted to be brave, like the doctor.
It's such an ick. I want to be brave like the doctor and let everyone here die for me. I guess that's not too inaccurate. A lot of people have died for the doctor. Apparently, Ruby thinks she's invincible now because she decides to go out to face the Shriek on her own with just like a metal pole. But don't worry, Conrad follows her with a cricket bat. I'm sure this will help against these really fast, dangerous creatures who want to rip you apart. I'm not sure what Ruby's plan was because as soon as they see the Shriek, they go to run away in the opposite direction. So what was she doing? Luckily, Unit turns up just in time. However, when confronted, it it turns out the Shriek are actually just Conrad's friends in costumes. What is going on? And it was Conrad behind the whole thing. Apparently, they're a part of an organization that wants to expose the government's lies by pretending to be aliens. And Conrad isn't actually interested in Ruby. He was just using her for her connection to UNIT. I really don't understand the motivation here. It doesn't make any sense. And again, I thought UNIT was meant to be secretive, so when people see aliens, they try and attempt to cover it up and hide it. But now they seem like they're trying to fight to make the point that aliens do exist. If anything, this sounds like a good way for them to go back undercover. Let Conrad say that none of this is real, and they're like, oh, you caught us. Okay, never mind. We'll just go back to our office jobs that we do. The main thing I get from this is that they think UNIT is using taxpayers' money for something secretive and pretending that they're fighting aliens, but they don't really explain what the other thing is. And then Conrad goes on live stream and lists everyone who works at UNIT, which I'm pretty sure is enough alone for him to be arrested and sent to prison for like leaking government data. But no, instead they're just like, oh no, why is he doing this? Arrest him, send him to prison. I would almost understand more if this was like an animal rights organization and they were arguing that aliens are just another form of life, so they shouldn't be kept up in cages like monsters. That would make more sense to me than aliens aren't real, they're lying. They're just using our money for something else. Oh my god, just saying this, I remember that people used to think that 5G towers would give them COVID. So maybe this isn't too far-fetched, but oh god, is that depressing. It's still pissing me off. Maybe that's what it is. Stupid, nonsensical people piss me off in real life, so I don't want them in my favorite TV show. Because of all this public backlash, it actually sounds like the government is looking to defund and shut down UNIT, which is crazy because they know that aliens exist and that UNIT works to save people all the time. Worse again, one of the employees is undercover working for Conrad. And that makes no sense because if he works for UNIT, he knows what they actually do and he would have seen aliens. So why would he be helping Conrad convince people otherwise? Conrad is now working his way up to UNIT HQ with a gun. Like, surely at this point they can just shoot him on sight. He's broken into a government building with a weapon. Kind of doesn't matter if he's live streaming. That seems pretty clear to me. If he's holding a gun, they should be able to shoot him. Kate apparently thinks the best way to convince everyone that aliens are real is to release the Shriek that wants to eat Conrad. This is very high risk, low reward potential, because if everyone online thinks that it's all special effects, what's to stop them from witnessing Conrad get eaten to pieces and then going, yeah, but it's just special effects. Then he's just dead and there's a Shriek on the loose. I don't care. At this point, let the alien eat Conrad, okay? Let him get eaten. That's the best form of justice. Just before he gets eaten, Conrad admits that he was lying and made the whole thing up, and then Ruby tasers the Shriek and saves him. And again, this doesn't make sense. Why would Conrad lie if he knew aliens existed? And apparently hashtag I stand with UNIT is trending. It's so cringe. I didn't think Conrad's audience would be so easily swayed, especially considering Conrad's like a mission was obviously under threat. I don't think that would stand up in court. Now Conrad's in prison and the doctor pays him a visit to tell him off. And even once he's in the TARDIS, Conrad somehow still is so assured that he was right, even though he's literally standing in a time machine. And just when I felt a little bit of satisfaction knowing that he was going to rot in jail for the rest of his life, Mrs. Flood shows up and sets him free. This is another episode which was almost so good, but then they create a villain character who is just so evil without any real justification. Like, they give a little context of his mum maybe not giving him enough attention as a child, but I definitely don't think that's enough to justify these actions. And again, why would you pretend that aliens don't exist when you know they do exist? Surely, if anything, you'd be trying to expose the fact that this government agency is fighting and capturing aliens and they don't want us to know about it. That would literally make so much more sense. Why didn't they just do that? Or is it meant to be that so many alien invasions have happened now that everyone just accepts that they're real? Also, while I really enjoyed Ruby's solo episode last season, it made sense in the context of the timeline, whereas this episode completely pulls us out of the ongoing storyline with the Doctor and Belinda, especially when they include the Doctor at the end, where he's outside of this timeline altogether. He's not met Belinda yet. Also, I actually would have really liked to have seen a solo Belinda episode. That way we could see more of her character's development without the Doctor. Plus, taking the Doctor out the majority of this episode means we didn't get a chance to see him cry. The streak is broken. We're halfway through now. On to the story and the engine. Another stop on the Doctor and Belinda's attempts to find Earth on May 24th. This time they land in Lagos, Nigeria in 2019. Doctor decides to stop and visit an old friend at his barbershop, but instead finds that it's been turned into a trap where they're forced to tell stories to feed something. And as soon as the door to the barbershop shuts behind him, the Doctor is now trapped as well. We meet the barber, ooh, spooky, who has trapped them there and cuts their hair while they tell stories. If there wasn't the sinister undertone of everyone being held there against their will, it could actually be quite wholesome. You go for a haircut, you tell a story, it creates energy. It seems quite sustainable. It's now the Doctor's turn to tell a story, and we see it come to life through the magic of the barber. He tells a story about Belinda working as a nurse, and apparently it creates so much energy that the battery is filled. Turns out the Doctor's friend, Omo, told the barber about the Doctor because he knew he would have enough stories so that they could leave. Betrayal makes the Doctor sad, but I didn't technically see any tears leave his eyes, so I don't know if we can count this one. When the Doctor tries to force the door open, we see where they actually are. Riding on the back of a robotic spider in space. Of course! Apparently there is a time-space compressor built into the door, so it means they are both in the barbershop on the street and in the Nexus. While all of this is happening, Belinda is back on the TARDIS, but every time the door opens, warning signals go off, so she goes to find the Doctor. While she's on the street, I'm pretty sure she sees the baby from Space Babies. I think it's Poppy, the captain, but they don't really give us anything else to go off of. Belinda then finds the barbers, walks straight in, and is trapped as well. Like, they literally watched her walk in and let the door shut behind her. Surely someone would have made more of an effort to be like, wait, no, don't let the door shut. Then they could have all left. Now we find out that the barber is actually a servant of the gods. He learned how to harness their powers by collecting stories and then use this to build the Nexus. But then the gods rejected him, and now he wants to get revenge. Don't worry, I don't have a clue what's going on either. The Doctor also realizes that one of the other characters there, Abby, is actually the daughter of a god, Anansi, and he technically won her as his bride in a bet. Uh-oh, that's a little bit icky. We also see that the Doctor who he was at that point is actually the Doctor that we saw in Jodie Whittaker's era, which in theory, he has no memory of being. So how does he remember this story? Seems like a little bit of a plot hole. So the point of the barbershop is they're collecting stories as a form of energy, which is helping them make their way to the heart of the Nexus, where the barber is going to cut the stories of the gods, meaning they no longer exist. This includes Abby's father, which she didn't realize. Now, to create more energy, Abby starts doing the Doctor's hair, telling a story of how slaves used to weave maps into their braids to show the way out. You might be able to see where this is going. The Doctor and Belinda then make a run for it to the back rooms, and Abby has weaved the route to escape in the Doctor's hair. Following the path, the Doctor and Belinda find the story engine machine. The Doctor then connects himself to it and overloads the engine with the stories from all his regenerations. By the time the barber gets there, it's too late, and the Doctor basically convinces him he might as well let them all go because they're all going to explode with the engine otherwise anyway. Eventually, he also convinces the barber to leave and escape with them rather than just letting himself be blown up. And now it seems like all is just forgiven with the barber. Like, the Doctor just lets him go carry on collecting stories, but he just says he won't do it for evil anymore. I don't understand. Right, my overall thoughts on this episode. Firstly, from my understanding, there is absolutely no need for them to be trapped there. Like, if they just kept the barbershop open like usual, people could come and go as they please, get their hair cut, add power to the engine, go home. They would just have like an infinite source of power. I also don't feel like they were under real threat at any point. They were just trapped. Like when one of them says, I don't know how much more of this I can take. Unless they just didn't show it very well, I don't think they're in any actual physical pain. And other than the alarm going off, it doesn't show any consequences of them not telling stories. Like if they just went on strike and were like, nope, send us home, we're not doing any more. It doesn't show any consequences to their actions. On the plus side, I really like how they show the Doctor's new perspective of being a black man, but in a positive point of view, like showing a really nice connection that he has with the black community. Obviously, racism is going to be an ongoing topic, but there will be so many positive things about being a part of the black community that I'm sure lots of people watching this would like to see. But overall, I think this episode was pretty weak. And also, it's such a shame. Belinda's character doesn't really contribute anything to this episode at all. And when we're stuck on an 8-episode season, we can't really miss 2 episodes back to back of learning about the new companion. Let's keep going. The Interstellar Song Contest. It also aired the same night as Eurovision, and if Doctor Who wasn't camp enough, they've kicked it up a notch with this one. Time for another quick hop in time and space, just to let the Vindicator do its magic. Obviously not to stay for anything exciting. No, they're staying to watch the show. Now, fresh from cryogenic suspension, Rylan is ready to host the show. This made me giggle so much. It's so silly. And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with a silly episode. We had the Absorbaloff, the one where the Doctor works in a school. No, the other one where he works in a school. And that one with James Corden. Plus, almost all of the Christmas specials are silly as well. And no, none of them are standout quality episodes, but they add a humorous interval to slightly more serious ongoing storylines. And I will judge a whimsical episode fairly if it follows through with a plot that makes sense. Anyway, the Doctor and Belinda obviously decide to stick around for this iconicness, but as the show begins, the operations room is hijacked, and instead they start transmitting the dress rehearsal to the audience sitting at home. Meanwhile, the hijackers open up the gravity dome and launch launch the entire live audience into space. Oh my god, I am shocked. Just before this happens, the Doctor's tampering with controls, but then also gets launched out into space. Meanwhile, Belinda gets caught and trapped in their booth. This imagery here is actually horrifying. Watching everyone get out into space and then freeze to death. Oh, it makes me think of that Peter Capaldi episode on the space station where all the crew die, but the suits keep going. Ugh, I hated that. Okay, so despite them all being sucked into space, apparently the Mavity shell is still on. Firstly, I like how the Mavity jokes are still going. Secondly, what is the Mavity shell doing if they are all frozen in space? I would have assumed if it was working, they would all still be on the ground. So anyway, what they're saying is that somehow all those people are actually still alive. They're just suspended and frozen there, which somewhat takes the severity out of the situation. However, stage 2, the hijackers have a delta wave, which for those of you who did the reading will remember, it's a mass weapon of destruction, which can be used to fry the brains of all living organisms in its path. Previously, the 9th Doctor constructed a delta wave in an attempt to wipe out the Daleks, but ultimately decided he couldn't use it because it would also kill all the humans as well. So it's kind of a big deal. Now the Doctor is gone and Belinda is stuck without the TARDIS. She finds a couple of other survivors who also got stuck, including a performer for the show. As the Doctor is turning into a little space popsicle, he sees flashes of his granddaughter Susan, who we learnt about in last season. She's telling him to go back, which spurs him on. He grabs a confetti cannon and launches himself back to the space station. So camp. Luckily for the Doctor, he lands back with 2 audience members who also got stuck, and one of them is a nurse, and they quickly get to work stabilizing him after he's been exposed to the vacuum of space. Turns out before the Doctor got he triplicated the Mavity field and confirms that everyone up there is technically still alive. Once he's caught up with everything, the Doctor realizes that the hijackers are planning to transmit the delta wave to the trillions of people watching at home, killing all of them. And I think we got a cheeky little tear there because he's worried about Belinda. Now we start to find out a little bit more about these hijackers. They're called Hellions. And apparently they're a race who practice cannibalism and witchcraft and also destroyed their own planet. But I have a feeling that's possibly not accurate. Who destroys their own planet? I guess we're doing it now, aren't we? Shit. I got myself there. It turns out that the performer who Belinda is with is actually also a Hellion in disguise, but not an evil one. And she explains that their planet was actually taken over by a corporation to harvest all the honey flavoring that they had. And once they were done, they burned all the crops so nothing could grow there again, basically destroying the planet for the Hellions. So that's why the hijackers are there, to get revenge on the corporation who sponsor the show. A bit of a tenuous connection to justify killing trillions of people who just like a sing-song. That's like someone trying to get revenge on Pepsi by killing everyone who watches the Super Bowl. Not sure you're making the point you think you are. Now, in order to do something I don't yet understand, the Doctor needs an expert in triangulation. Luckily, the guy who's with him, who's not the nurse, is the guy who invented the triangulation system. Wow, what a coincidence. The delta wave is just about to hit 100% when the Doctor arrives in the transmission room to stop the hijackers. He destroys the delta wave with his sonic screwdriver, which is a little bit anticlimactic for something that seemed pretty scary and complicated a minute ago, but I guess they're running low on time. The Doctor then uses a series of hard light holograms to basically beat the crap out of this kid. Now, we know the Doctor's pissed, but it's quite unlike him to use physical violence in this way to get out his frustration. Plus, he knows that everyone who got out into space is still savable. And obviously the Doctor has killed, but more so out of necessity. Whereas now the threat of the delta wave is gone, he's just really going out of his way to beat this guy up. Once again, he sees a vision of his granddaughter Susan telling him to stop, and then he goes to Belinda instead. Now they start the long process of bringing everyone one by one back to the station and resuscitating them. They said there were 100,000 people in that audience, so this is gonna take a bloody long time. Luckily, they also somehow managed to repurpose the viewing booths to bring groups of people back at once. And rather than have the authorities show up and send everyone home, they just go back to watching the show. On their way back to the TARDIS, Eurovision legend Graham Norton appears in hologram form to tell some fun facts about the Earth, including the fact
the planet ended on the old Earth date, May the 24th, 2025.
the day after Belinda left. No wonder they were struggling to land. Hearing this, the Doctor and Belinda tried to take off again, but the TARDIS says no. And when we think it's all over, Mrs. Flood comes back and gets defrosted. Turns out she was in deep freeze a little bit longer than she could handle and has to regenerate. Okay, she's a Time Lord. But wait, no. She bi-generates. Apparently we're doing this again. And it is finally revealed she is actually a female Time Lord from the Doctor's past called the Rani. And not only that, because she bi-generated, there's now 2 of them. I have to admit, I don't know yet if this is a worthwhile payoff. So many people thought it was going to be another regeneration of the Master, but turns out it's a different Time Lord. Right, that's a lot to digest. Let's put aside the Mrs. Flood stuff just to review the rest of the episode. My main criticism is that I wish there had been actual jeopardy for the people in space. We're basically told straight away that they're still alive. So after the initial shock of seeing them all go, and then thinking they were all dead. It makes the consequences seem a bit meaningless. And actually, what was the point in the hijackers doing that? If they were going to set off the Delta Wave anyway, they could have just killed everyone there instantly. I think all it needed was like a countdown for how long the people could survive out in space. Like if it was an hour and then they would die because they've been frozen for too long or something like that, it would have created a sense of urgency. And then as the clock ticked down, the Doctor would have to come up with a solution to save them. And that leads me on to my next criticism. How come every issue that needed some kind of specialist ended up being one of the 6 people who were trapped there? So the medical assistance that the Doctor needed, and he lands right next to a nurse, and not even the nurse that he's traveling through time and space with, another nurse. He then needs someone to triangulate. Don't worry, here's the guy who bloody came up with the triangulation system. And finally, I didn't really get what this guy's specialty was. I assumed he must be a music producer because he was with one of the acts. But when the Doctor needs someone to figure out how to turn the booths into a transmat, this is your guy. It kind of feels like playing a video game on easy mode where you get given all the hints and extra items without doing anything. Like, there can be a funny coincidence that helps a plan come together. And then there's, oh, the Doctor has this problem that he can't solve on his own. Let's make the person he's standing next to the solution to that problem. And then 3 times. I hate to say it, but that's what I call lazy writing. Having said all of that, I do think it was still a solid concept for an episode. Maybe we could have seen a bit more of Belinda grappling with the idea of her being stuck there, but they dismissed that quite quickly. And we did finally get the reveal about Mrs. Flood, which thank God was nowhere near as disappointing as the reveal for Ruby's mum last season. I don't think that would be possible. It actually still pisses me off. Anyway, we're in the end game now. Let's see how they pull off this 2-part finale. Right, let's start with part 1, Wish World. This time we're following the newly bi-generated Rani to Bavaria in 1865, where she kidnaps a baby who is the 7th son of the 7th son of a 7th son, and apparently that's really lucky. At this point, I don't really understand what's going on, but it seems like she's using the baby to make wishes. Whatever she does, it lands us back with the Doctor and Belinda on Earth, coupled up with their own baby. And it's Poppy from Space Babies. How has this happened? Also, Conrad is like a TV dictator? What is this guy doing here? So it seems like the Doctor and Belinda have a happy little life here with Poppy. And even though they don't remember who they were before, everything seems normal to them, even when a mug slips directly through a solid table. Ruby shows up at their front door looking for the Doctor, but they call the police and report someone with doubt. And we also see old companion Mel, who's clearly brainwashed in the same capacity, but they're all really excited for May 24th tomorrow. Oh, and there are these big dino skeleton things in the sky. I'll be honest with you, watching this episode for the first time, I was so confused. I really didn't have a clue what was going on, and trust me, some of it still doesn't make sense. But now I've gone back over it and watched it a couple of times, I might be able to explain it a bit better. So my understanding is that the Rani pick up Conrad because they think he has such a genuine, although misguided, want to make the world his idea of a better place, which includes women in the home, no homosexuals, and other very traditional values. And this desire is brought to life through that baby who can grant wishes. Back on Earth, the Doctor is stewing and having doubts. Again, he sees a vision of his granddaughter Susan, and then somehow Rogue from last season appears on the TV to warn him. Apparently he's projecting a message from the Hell Dimension somehow. And his warning is...
Tables don't do that.
What the fuck? This is so dumb. I hate when shows do this, and I feel like Doctor Who has definitely been guilty of this in the past as well. When a character has some kind of opportunity to warn them of some kind of threat, and they make it so cryptic, it's like, what is the point? Firstly, how does Rogue have any clue what's going on when he's in a Hell Dimension? And secondly, why wouldn't he just say, your world has been taken over by the Rani, none of this is real? Alternatively, you could argue that this isn't actually Rogue, and it's like the Doctor's subconscious reaching out to him to tell him something's wrong. But they don't make that clear. And for the love of God, I hope it's the second explanation, because the first one just pisses me off. Oh, and also I'm still hoping they will go back and save Rogue at some point, because he's just chilling out there. Even with that utterly useless information, the Doctor manages to have a revelation and realise that something's off. But Belinda sees his doubt, calls the authorities, and they both get taken away. And now when the Doctor finally comes face to face with the Rani, he starts to get some of his memories back. The Rani reveals that the Doctor disturbed the Pantheon, and that's what triggered the God of Wishes to be born. And she then used the Vindicator that the Doctor and Belinda had been charging up to amplify the wish across the world. But with a wish this big, there are still errors and mistakes which cause doubts that crack the world. And the Rani's whole plan is to use these doubts to crack open the underverse beneath so that they can free Omega, the first ever Time Lord. Now the Doctor's memories come rushing back just in time for him to be locked out on a balcony, about to plunge to his death to the breaking world beneath him. Well, what the hell was that? The majority of this episode gives you nothing. You're just watching them live their lives with no context, no explanation. And like I said, when I came away from watching this episode the first time, I was so confused. After all the times in this series where I thought, wow, they're just using all this exposition to explain what's happening rather than having the actors show it through their acting, this is the first time where I was like, actually, we really could have done with some explanation at the beginning of the episode so you can watch it and understand what's going on. Like, if they showed the Rani explaining to Conrad what they want him to do, then we would be able to see it all come to life and be able to pick up on the discrimination and know that comes from Conrad because of his prejudices. But without this explanation, it just makes it a really hard episode to watch. And I think if it's good writing, you shouldn't have to watch an episode multiple times in order to understand it. Like, there's a difference between leading up to a big reveal that brings lots of unresolved ideas together, and then there's watching a 45-minute episode of a series and having no clue what's going on the whole time. I also don't understand what the point of Conrad's like TV show is. What is that doing? He's like talking about the Doctor the whole time, but they imply in the episode that he's having to concentrate really hard on keeping this world running. So surely he should just be like talking about what's going on in the planet. Like he said, sometimes he forgets to think about the weather and then South Africa gets flooded. So it would make more sense if he was like, now everyone's going to work, the sun is shining, blah, 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 blah. But I don't really understand what his narrative talking about the Doctor does to maintain the world. Anyway, this is only part one of the two-part season finale, so let's hope the rest of our unresolved questions get answered. I'm doubtful. Season finale part 2, the reality war. We jump right back in at the Doctor falling to the crumbling earth below when all of a sudden a door opens and you guessed it, Anita from the Christmas special opens a door to the Time Hotel. I mean, of course, we all saw that coming, right? No. Meanwhile, Ruby is about to get crushed to death when the clock strikes midnight, and all of a sudden, she wakes up back in her bed May 23rd like nothing ever happened. And Belinda does the same thing too, this time without the Doctor beside her. Anita explains that every time it reaches midnight, the whole world resets, and it's done this hundreds of times already. The Doctor then realizes this is what the Rani needs to break through reality and get to Omega. Now that the Doctor remembers everything, he yassifies himself back into his kilt, Queenslay, and even though he knows the world isn't real, he still believes that Poppy is his daughter. So they grab Belinda and Poppy and go back to UNIT, and by opening the doors to the Time Hotel, it seems to bring real time back and reminds everyone of reality. It also brings Rosie back into existence because Conrad wouldn't be able to imagine her existing as a trans woman, which I think is quite clever. However, I don't really remember all these sexist, transphobic, homophobic viewpoints from Conrad ever really being highlighted until this point, or even hinted at. Like, I thought he was presented as just this sad, lonely boy who wants to be the center of attention, but they've really bumped his evil up a notch. UNIT send out a signal to all of their team, including Mel, Ruby, and Shirley, to wake them up to reality and bring them back in, which conveniently they don't explain how that works, especially if the only thing that's brought the rest of UNIT back is the opening to the Time Hotel. How does sending a little signal to the other guy's brains suddenly wake them up? It doesn't make sense. Finally, the Doctor and Ruby are properly reunited, and Mel rides her scooter directly into UNIT HQ, which, to be clear, means she rode it up the lift. So unnecessary. Also, apparently before getting here, Mel stopped to get her hair redone, so now she has all these curls in. Really great prioritizing, Mel. There's an urgent situation unfolding here. The Doctor explains that Conrad's wish could only do so much, and it had to use people's memories to fill in the gaps. And because Conrad wanted everyone to be in like a very stereotypical family unit, this means that Poppy was created from the Doctor and Belinda's memories. I'm not quite sure what Belinda contributed to this, or why she saw that other version of Poppy in Lagos. They never explain that. The Rani now comes to confront the Doctor again with all his memories back, and she reveals that she escaped being killed with the rest of the Time Lords by using a time ring, which I can only assume is some kind of vortex manipulator type thing. She was then searching for the Doctor, pretending to be Mrs. Flood, all to lead them here. So a bit more about this Time Lord that the Rani want to release. Omega was the Time Lord who created time travel, but was banished to the Underverse because he was just insane. Classic Time Lord at this point. But the Rani want to release him so they can use his DNA to create a new generation of Time Lords. The Doctor and the Rani explain that Time Lords were hit by a genetic explosion which made them all sterile. So that's why they can't reproduce Time Lords naturally. And that's why Poppy's impossible, because the Doctor wouldn't actually be able to have his own daughter. Now, this isn't a bit of Time Lord lore that I was aware of before this point, and I'm not sure where it sits in the timeline of things, because we know that the Doctor has his granddaughter Susan, and David Tennant's Doctor also said that he was a dad once. So unless all of that is like adoptive parents, is it like that episode The Doctor's Daughter where they just like take a strand of DNA and create a new Time Lord? Because surely they could still do that with the Doctor and the Rani. I do believe this is established canon, but it's just the first time any of this has been introduced since the series rebooted in 2005, so it's a bit confusing to kind of throw it in now with not a lot of explanation. The wider conundrum that they're now faced with is if they try and stop the Rani and stop Conrad's wish, then Poppy will cease to exist. But if they want to keep Poppy existing, then the world is just broken. To combat this, the Doctor has a zero room set up, which apparently can exist outside of reality. So incredibly convenient that they were able to do this on short notice. The plan is to put Poppy inside the zero room, and then even if the wish ends, it should protect protect her in there. Belinda decides to stay with her, so they're both locked in the Zero room while the Doctor carries on the fight. It's quite cool to see Unit HQ in like full battle mode. I don't think I've seen this before. Oh, we get another great throwback. They strap Ruby into the Indigo device, which Martha used in season 4 to escape from the Daleks. At that point, it was like a risky experimental device, but now it's a fully functioning matter transporter. They use this to send Ruby to stop Conrad while the Doctor fights the Rani. Now back on the Rani's base, Omega's prison opens, but he's not really a Time Lord anymore. He's turned into like a monster god creature, and he just eats the Rani. Bit of a backfire on her plan. The other Rani, Mrs. Flood, then takes the time ring and transports herself away, leaving the Doctor to try and reason with Omega, but he just wants to destroy the world. As the Doctor backs away to try and avoid being eaten, he wishes if only there was a weapon he could use. How fortunate, the Vindicator is up on the wall behind him, and he uses this like a gun, expelling the remaining energy into Omega and sending him back to hell. While Ruby is trying to reason with Conrad, she manages to get a hold of the baby and instead chooses to make a wish for Conrad to be happy, and he then disappears. Kind of a crazy wholesome way for her to end him. Like if the whole reason this world was created is because of how much hate Conrad felt, then making him be happy just kind of takes that all away. Love that for Ruby. Now the reality around them starts falling apart, but the Doctor and Ruby manage to get back to the TARDIS just in time. Ruby then asks if they can use the baby to wish Poppy into existence, which makes sense to me, but the Doctor says then she might vanish. No real explanation there. Instead, the Doctor wishes for no more wishes, so the baby is just a baby. Surely he could have at least made some improvements to the world first, like get rid of famine and war and sexism, racism, all those things that still exist. Selfish, selfish man. Now they go back to Unit to see what's happened to Belinda and Poppy in the Zero room. They open the door and find them both still inside. This little girl is so cute. It's so sweet how the Doctor and Belinda are already like planning their little adventures with Poppy included. But as they're talking and passing Poppy's jacket back and forth, it slowly starts shrinking and eventually it disappears along with Poppy. It's so sad, but Ruby's the only one who sees this all happening, and the Doctor and Belinda have already forgotten who Poppy was. This made me want to cry. After creating a baby out of nothing and then setting up a storyline like they're all gonna go fly off together, and then poof, out of existence. Why? Why would they do that to us? I actually thought the idea of the three of them traveling together was actually quite a cool one. That's not a format we've really seen with this era of Doctor Who, having a child in the mix. And yeah, maybe it would go on for like half a season, one season maybe, and then Belinda realizes it's not safe enough. But still, that would have been a cool dynamic to explore. Now back on Earth, it turns out there's been lots of little changes to reality, so the world's not exactly how they left it, including the fact that Conrad is now a cook in Lewisham, so apparently that's his idea of happiness. And even with all of that, Ruby is still the only one who remembers Poppy even existing, and she really has to push the Doctor to realize that something's wrong. Apparently time has shifted by 1 degree, and that's why there's all these little errors, including Poppy not existing anymore, and the Doctor is the only one who can fix it. So he leaves the rest of them behind and gets back in the TARDIS, talking like he's about to regenerate, and then Jodie Whittaker's Doctor arrives. What? Apparently she was popped out of her timeline because of what the Doctor's about to do. He's going to punch regeneration energy into the time vortex in order to shift time back to how it should be. And it doesn't seem like Jodie Whittaker's Doctor is actually there to do anything or add anything. It's just like a little, oh, something for the fans. Show them the Doctor. She just walks around and chats for a bit. Once she disappears, the Doctor then projects his regeneration energy through the TARDIS into the time vortex. Everything explodes and he wakes up in Belinda's garden. Now in this reality, Poppy does exist and always has done, but she's not the Doctor's daughter, she's only Belinda's. Time has been rewritten, so the whole time Belinda's been away with the Doctor trying to get home, it's because she's been trying to get back to Poppy. I think the argument is that Poppy wouldn't be able to be sustained as the Doctor's biological daughter because the reality is that Time Lords can't reproduce. So another narrative had to be created around this by making her just Belinda's daughter. Ultimately, none of this makes any sense anyway, because how does the Doctor shooting regeneration energy into the time vortex specifically change the fact that Poppy does or doesn't exist? If it was fixing reality, she shouldn't exist because she never would have existed in the first place. She's a baby out in space somewhere in this reality, or is that baby gone? It doesn't make any sense. Belinda understandably wants to stay at home with Poppy, so the Doctor has to leave on his own, still with his regeneration energy running through him. And as he looks out into the vacuum of space, he starts to regenerate again, and then what the hell has happened? What? Excuse me? I 100% thought they were going to leave us on a cliffhanger of not knowing who he regenerated into. I'm pretty sure the contract with Disney has ended and they haven't yet confirmed another season of Doctor Who, so this would be a very easy point for the series to kind of end. In my opinion, this is a really desperate attempt from the writers to force the fandom to push a new season of Doctor Who out. Like, these last 2 seasons have not been good, so there has to be a push from the audience to keep it going, otherwise it's just gonna get cancelled. Of course I'd love Billie Piper to be back in the show. I'd prefer her to be Rose, but I guess her being the Doctor is kind of like a weird compromise. And surely this means they need to bring David Tennant back again. Why don't we just reboot the show from 2006 again? Just Billy Piper, David Tennant, carry on the show like nothing's changed. That would be my honest preference. Now, if we can, let's put that aside and talk about the finale as a whole. Big, fat, confusing stinker. I feel like there are so many things that just don't make sense or are just like, what's the point? So after all the work that Rani did from 2 seasons of following the Doctor to get Omega back, he just eats her in like a minute and then Mrs. Flood teleports away. That's really not a satisfying ending. Also, something I hadn't mentioned from part 1 of this season finale is that they show like a group of disabled people who are all kind of outcast from society and ignored because that's what Conrad would do, ignored disabled people. And it's like an interesting and thought-provoking thing to point out that lots of people don't acknowledge disabled people, and they imply that because they're kind of like out of this world where everyone's being hypnotized, they're able to see reality for what it is and they're coming up with a plan to solve it, and then nothing happens. They don't do anything to solve the issue. Like, they literally say they've got this plan to lure Conrad out so that someone can stop him, and then none of that follows through to the second part of the finale at all. So what was the point in any of those scenes? It would have been so much better to use the point that no one saw them as a way for them to be able to like sneak through barriers, get in places that other people wouldn't be able to, prove the point that, oh, even if you don't see disabled people, it's not because they're useless and valueless. But instead, they set up this whole premise of being like, look at all these disabled people who have been ignored, but they don't give them any purpose beyond that. So it's really not making the point that they should be making. Also, another criticism, how is the Time Hotel still able to exist? Like, if in this reality the Earth is blown up, which we know to be true because when the Doctor and Belinda have travelled to the future, no one knows what the Earth is, then surely it's not possible for the Time Hotel to exist in the future of Earth. It doesn't make sense. Please, someone explain to me how that works. It was an interesting idea to bring the Rani back in. I think that's obviously a very well-established Doctor Who villain that we haven't seen return. But instead of exploring her character more, they just make her entire purpose bringing back an even bigger villain. And then the Doctor just shoots Omega, who's meant to be like a god at this point. So surely there's no way it could have been that easy. Like, how fortunate that the Vindicator that was meant to be used to find Earth, that was then used to open a door, was then able to be used as a gun. It really is another one of these just lazy things of, oh, the Doctor needs something to save the day. Oh, how about that Vindicator that's on the wall? Yeah, we'll use that. That'll work. So lazy. And finally, we are still having these clues and hints to the Doctor's granddaughter Susan returning, but nothing ever happened with that. You can't keep these ongoing hints without the payoff at the end. So overall, I'm not too pleased. So looking at the whole series, overall, I feel like a lot of these stories just lacked a solid structure and plan. And I don't know if they brought in these storylines with the gods to kind of like up the ante and spend some of that sweet, sweet Disney money. But for me, it has been a really blatant style over substance storyline. I don't believe the Disney contract has been renewed, so actually maybe that could be a really good thing for the show to just be set solely with the BBC, focus more on like the storylines, the character development, and less on all the showboating and special effects budget. And I know the gods isn't like a brand new thing to be introduced to Doctor Who, and it was a part of the original Doctor Who series before the reboot, but for the Doctor Who that I'm used to, it almost feels like a bit outside of the reality that's been set up for us. I really like how they've referred to gods in previous like historical episodes, like in the Fires of Pompeii, where the people there are talking as if it's the gods are angry and that's why the volcano's erupting, but the reality is that it's actually an alien species causing all of this stuff to happen, but the humans attribute it to a god that doesn't actually exist. And you could so easily do this for so many other mythologies and ideas of gods, that actually the reality is it's an alien species of some sort causing things to happen that make humans think it's gods. But in this new era of Doctor Who, they take the idea of gods very literally, and maybe there is a way to make it work, but for me, I just haven't really enjoyed it. Now for everyone's favourite part, let's rank these episodes from best to worst. Okay, I think the episode that was best by far is The Well. It was scary and suspenseful with a really good reveal, and I was genuinely on the edge of my seat for this whole episode. It also had some great messages and visibility for the deaf community, but they did it in a really clever way without being in your face about it. I think this was actually the best episode across both of these 2 new seasons, by far. I think number 2 up at the Interstellar Song Contest might seem like a rogue one. For me, I really like the concept of this. Like, yeah, it's Eurovision in space, why the hell not? And the horrifying visuals of seeing people get sucked out of the space station was actually really intense to watch. I just think removing the element of those people being at risk of dying took away from the suspense of the episode. That, and the fact that everything the Doctor needed to save the day was laid out in a platter in front of him. Like, he didn't have to overcome anything or figure anything out because there was just a person standing next to him who knew how to fix the problem. Okay, third, I think, is the Lux. This was another another like good concept that just kind of tripped at the end for me. Visually, it was really engaging with the Mr. Ringadin character. He was scary and it brought a lot of suspense to the episode. Having said that, it didn't really make the villain's motivations clear. Like, what would he have done if he'd become a solid creature? Did he just want to collect souls on rolls of film for eternity? And also the way he was destroyed at the end was quite anticlimactic. I think a few tweaks could have made this a much stronger contender. Next, I think I put the reality wall, the final bit of the finale. I would struggle to put this episode any higher just because of the amalgamation of lots of different things that don't quite make sense. Obviously, it was much better than last season's finale, but the storyline with Poppy was pretty meaningless. Like, they created this character out of nowhere just for her to not end up being the Doctor's daughter and be left behind on Earth with Belinda. So what was the point? Next, I think I'll put Lucky Day. This is another episode that started off so strong. I was really gripped by the storyline and the relationship between Ruby and Conrad. Yeah, sure, he was a bit of a wet blanket, but Ruby was happy, and I happily would have watched her having adventures on Earth, saving people and carrying on with her life. But then Conrad's character just sucked. Again, I can't really make sense of any of his motivations. Even with a villainous character where you disagree with what they're doing, you still need to give them some kind of substance that explains their motivations, but it just doesn't do that. Next, we'll go with Wishworld, the first part of the finale. This episode on its own was so confusing. Like I said, I had to go back and watch it multiple times, plus the finale episode, in order to make any sense of what was going on. And most people aren't going to go into the depths that I have in analysing these episodes, so how are you going to keep it interesting and engaging for your average audience member? Next, I'll put the Robot Revolution. I so wish they could have kicked things off on a stronger note. Just the concept was weak, the villain was weak, the supporting characters basically didn't add anything other than being cannon fodder. Second to last, I'm going to put the story in the engine. I just felt like so much of this episode didn't mean anything. Like, the threats and the danger weren't tangible enough for me to be invested in the storyline. Like I said before, I don't understand why they had to trap anyone in the barbershop. People could have just come in and got their hair done. And finally, by far the worst episode for me was the very first one with the Christmas special Joy to the World. It did not bring me joy. The only good part of this episode was introducing the concept of the time hotel. Other than that, I don't think I have anything good to say about it. Oh my goodness, thank you so much for hanging in there and getting through this with me. It feels like therapy to just get all of these thoughts out of my head. I hope you've enjoyed listening to my ramblings, and please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, I've just seen they're launching a new Doctor Who spin-off show with the crew from UNIT called The War Between the Land and Sea. And it seems like this is being pitched as a more adult show like Torchwood. So let me know if you would like to see a review of that when it comes out. Hopefully that could be very good. Right, who knows when we'll be back with a season 3 review, but let's just hope for a full-on Billie Piper takeover. Right, I'll see you then. Bye!